We just had the youngest MP elected in Norwich North. Do you see many future leaders coming out of the younger generations of MPs in the House?
Well, if I just looked at the Labour side, I'm bound to say that my view on the collective merit of the Cabinet today is less than it had been in previous. Bear in mind, I was a member of the Shadow Cabinet for 7 years when I was the Chief Whip, and round the table we had Gordon Brown, we had Tony Blair, we had John Prescott, we had many other people, Margaret Beckett and so on. I think that younger members of the Cabinet, first of all, they're lucky, and luck plays a large part in it. So coming forward, well, I supported Alan Johnson for Deputy Leader, and he would get my vote again. As far as the other side, Nick Clegg had a difficult start, but he's come through it, he's got mettle. And David Cameron, of course, who came out of the blue as far as I was concerned, he has baggage, he has form, he's been working behind the scenes, he worked for Norman Lamont, the Tory Chancellor of the Exchequer, but he undoubtedly is the most difficult opponent that Gordon Brown could face.
I suppose that brings us on to Gordon Brown himself. Do you think that he is the right man for the job, as keeps coming up these days, or has he just been unlucky in being in the wrong place at the right time?
Well, he's in the right place at the wrong time.
Right.
Harold Macmillan, when asked one question, what worries you most? He said, events, dear boy, events. In other words, things that happen. You've got no control over things that happen. And Gordon got off to a good start 2 years ago, but then he's had a series. The biggest one, of course, is the continuing war in Iraq and Afghanistan, but of course the credit crunch. Though they're massive events, and I believe he's the best man for the job. I believe he's doing well, and certainly come the general election, I will be working for a Labour victory in Edmonton and nationally.
Right. Do you think he's got time to turn the party round for the election?
Yes, it's getting very short. The next steps are the party conference in September. He's got to win then. I attended the PLP meeting a month ago after the local elections, and everyone said Gordon Brown is going to be brought down, but he wasn't. He made a brilliant defence of his action, admitted with humility that he needed to change. His next battle will come at the party conference. Once that is over, I very much hope that the malcontents, who have a grounds, I'm not arguing against that, they ought to recognise that it won't be Gordon Brown that goes down, it'll be them who go down as well. This is the time for everybody in the Labour movement to recognise that if in fact we lose, we are possibly in for 10 or 12 years of what we called Thatcherism. And quite frankly, it was not very pleasant.
Right. Now, talking of the general election, are you going to be able to give us a scoop as to when the election is going to be?
Absolutely. Don't forget that you heard this first on Radio Enfield, but the date is May the 6th next year, right, because May the 6th is the date of the local elections. And generally, when a general election is in the offing, it's called to coincide. Saves money, it concentrates the mind beautifully, and of course more people will vote in the local election when they go to vote for the general election. May the 6th next year.
So Gordon Brown isn't going to bow to pressure to go to the country earlier than that?
No, you see, where's the pressure coming from? It's not coming from within the Parliamentary Labour Party. Most Labour people have been dismayed, not least by the scandal of the expenses issue. That's not going to go away for years. He's laid out his policies, and all I would say to people who listen to this is, you can think about Gordon Brown for the last 2 years, but just think about the Labour government for the last 10 years. The old people particularly, they get free television, thanks to Labour. They get free travel, thanks to Labour. They've got increased benefits, thanks to Labour. And I say, vote Labour, don't let the Tories ruin it.
Do you think that there has been a certain amount of overreaction to the expenses scandal?
A little bit. But mind, I've attended one or two meetings where the issues have been raised, and I fully understand why people are angry. And the record will show that some colleagues took advantage. They abused and not used the system. Now they will need to be dealt with in a proper way. I spoke on the bill, the Parliamentary Standards Bill, from a point of view. There was a Conservative peer who wanted to lay down the law as to how the expenses in the Commons should be, and I got to my feet and said no. The House of Commons is a unique, it's part of the Parliament, but it has its own rules and regulations. When it comes to the House of Lords in a few months' time, we will have to make our own decision, and we will not like the Commons telling us how to do it.
Right. So turning back to the House of Lords now, I was wondering, when you first enter the House of Lords on your first day, is there a sort of a training programme, or there's some sort of rules that are set out for you?
No. By the time you get there, of course, and I was no exception, you ask questions, you make inquiries. The old system was you used to go around the House, you used to bow, and that was because in olden days, the writ of summons, which is signed by the Queen, is sent to you, and that was your passport into Parliament. Sometimes they were stolen, and an imposter used to come in. Now, in order to make sure that the man who stands before Parliament when I was elected is me, I am vouched for by two supporters who know me personally, plus Blackrod, plus the Garter King of Arms, so there's no question. I'm all in favour of what you might call pomp and circumstance, because in a bleak life, then I think it adds colour to it, and I would not want to divert from that.
Right. And can you remember what your maiden speech was in the House of Lords?
Well, I can't remember the detail, but I certainly spoke highly of the people of Edmonton and Enfield. I'm very proud of the fact that I was the first leader of the new council. There's a series of portraits on one of the corridors at the Civic Centre, and the very first leader of the London Borough of Enfield was Lord Graham of Edmonton. So I enjoyed that, and I've got utmost respect for anyone working in local government. I would do nothing to damage it.
One of the things which I think you did vote strongly for was the introduction of ID cards. And
Yes.
I'm just wondering, with the sort of recent announcement by Alan Johnson, just making it voluntary rather than a compulsory system,
Well,
do you agree with that? Or?
Well, my attitude to many things in politics is that if events change, if in actual fact the case for doing something is not there, then it's a big man who changes the policy. And as far as I'm concerned, it's quite clear from a cost, and the Labour Party, the Labour government is not looking for fights just now. And if it gets rid of a fight, the most satisfying events that I took part in was supporting a ban on fox hunting. I've never been warm to it. I've got not a question of class, just a question of I cannot believe that it's right for men and women to dress up in order to go out and slaughter innocent animals. It's wrong.
Right. One of the debates I think you spoke on recently was about the Olympic Games. I think this was in June, and we were talking to Michael Ryer, who's leader of the Enfield Council, a few weeks ago here, and the question of council tax bills came up, and obviously there's a levy within the council tax which is going towards funding the Olympics. Michael Ryer didn't seem to think that there would be many benefits coming out of the Olympics for the people in Enfield. Do you share that view?
No, I don't. Michael's entitled to his opinion. But one of my jobs is I was a member of the Lee Valley Regional Park Commission from the very beginning. I was a founder member in 1964, 5 and 6. And the Lee Valley Regional Park will bring massive publicity to this part of the world, and it will be a major thing. But as far as I'm concerned, the Olympics doesn't belong to any area. We in the south are going to benefit. I remember my wife was at 1948, and she would tell me about seeing Fanny Blankers-Koen and Zata Peck and other people. And I think the people of Enfield, Edmonton and Southgate, whether they go to see the event or not, they'll see it on television. And the great thing is that when people talk about the Olympics after 2012, the people of Enfield and Edmonton will say, I was there. I was there. The memory is going to carry them for the rest of their lives, and I think it's good.
And I think we're just about 3 years away from the opening ceremony now, so everything seems to be running on schedule within budget, so it will be interesting to see how things work out.
Was a Conservative Member of Parliament for Camborne. I've met him 2 or 3 times. A marvellous athlete, of course. He's the ideal man. He carries charisma around the world, and I'm convinced that he is going to be successful. Of course, there's lots of people. An event like that, it's not one man or woman or one committee or one government, it's the whole of the people. I think after a sticky start, when people shy-acted various aspects of it, I think the British people recognise that the Olympics in London in 2012 is a must. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to join the chorus to say, I was there.
And of course the eyes of the world will be on this country to present it. Yeah. Looking back over your career in politics, what's the one thing that you'd like to be remembered for, or the one thing that perhaps you're proudest of?
Proudest of? Well, I've taken part in many debates and voted on many issues. I've mentioned fox hunting. 2 years ago I was given an accolade by the League Against Cruel Sports for what I did in Parliament. I certainly made a major speech when the question of abolishing the hereditary element in it, and I'm proud of that, because I think that to be a member of a legislature ought not to rest upon the fact that your mother or your father was a servant of the King or the Queen or a beneficiary to the King or the Queen 500 years ago. So I've got no big highlight, except I've lived my life in the Commons, I live my life in the Lords, and as far as I'm concerned, British Parliament stands supreme amongst parliaments in the world.
Well, Ted, many thanks once again for coming up and seeing us today at Radio Enfield. As usual, it's always very interesting talking to you and finding out your own views of what's going on in Westminster, and also for telling us a little bit about your life and career in politics. Thank you very much.